I'm presenting the endangered language of Uchinaaguchi, which is the native language of Okinawa. Come next. Okay. These are my contents, my introduction, speech communities, a brief history, their future comparison, and my conclusion. So, the introduction of Uchinaaguchi is that it is from the northern Ryukyu branch of Japonic languages, which historically belongs to the Ryukyu kingdom. Its characteristics include five vowels, short and long, which is a, I, U, E, O. However, E and O are typically only seen in native words with a heavy syllable pattern. Um, the Uchinaguchi also includes a glottal stop and bilabial fricatives. So, why I chose Uchinaguchi for my term report is because, like 3 or so years ago, I watched an anime called The Aquatope on White Sand, which is pictured right here, um, which kind of sparked a fascination with the island and its marine life. As a former marine biology major, I've always had a large affinity for the ocean and all the different life that it supports. So when we visited Japan a couple years ago over the summer, um, we also visited Okinawa and we spent a few days there. This is a picture of me scuba diving in Naha with my family. Um, and yeah, I think that just really solidified my love for the island. Um, it's a beautiful place. The culture is very interesting. Um, and then another thing that was just really interesting to me. Over the summer, I took an anthropology of religion and magic class. So during that class, we had a brief section of our textbook that actually mentions the religion of the Ryukyu kingdom, um, which includes Okinawa. And then what really stuck with me was that it is actually one of the few religions in the world that is dominated by women. Um, so these are Kaminchu, which are the Okinawan female priestesses, and Onarigami is what they call the female, like this spiritual dominance that is seen in women through their religion. So some differences between Japanese and Uchinaguchi are their close back vowels, which are truly rounded instead of in Japanese where they are typically compressed. Uchinaguchi also has labialized consonants. Um, these are a couple examples that were actually lost in late Middle Japanese, as well as the palatalization and affricatization of plosive consonants T and K when they are before and sometimes after D, G, J, or I. So lastly, also, they have a lack of major allophones ts and z, which are seen in standard Japanese. So some of the major speech communities that still speak Uchinaguchi, um, however frequently or not frequently, would be in the Ryukyu Islands, specifically the southern region of the Okinawa Prefecture, and the city of Naha. Also in South America, there are some diaspora communities of immigrants that still speak Uchinaguchi, including Brazil, Peru, and Argentina. However, the most notable of them is in Brazil, which has one of the largest Okinawan immigrant communities located in Sao Paulo. and it is also one of the leading sources in the survival of Uchinaaguchi and Okinawan culture. There are also a couple of communities in the United States, mostly in Hawaii and along the West Coast, specifically in California. There's some in LA, as well as some in the Bay Area, San Francisco, San Jose, um, among others. So, a brief history of Uchinaaguchi. I think most of it really started when Okinawa was annexed by Japan in 1979. Prior to that, there was a little bit of back and forth between Japan and actually the United States of who owned Okinawa. Um, and then officially in 1879, Japan took over the ownership of Okinawa once again. So this led to a lot of assimilation policies, like the standard language enforcement, um, which was both in public and in private, and also the reforming of history books and school curriculums to mostly promote Japanese history and the Japanese language over Okinawan history. So this led to Uchinaguchi no longer being taught in school or by families. So now it's spoken mostly just among the older generations, and it's also seen in theater and music. Um, However, today it's mostly been replaced by either standard Japanese or a mix of Okinawan or Uchinaguchi and Japanese, which is called Okinawan Japanese. Another significant part of Okinawan history is the Battle of Okinawa, um, which was a battle between the Japanese Imperial Army and the United States military. It was considered one of the bloodiest battles of World War II, and even today, there is still a very heavy presence of United States military in Okinawa. Actually, Okinawa contains 74% of all of the US military bases that are stationed in Japan. Um, and today, there are some language and cultural revitalization efforts in place, mostly through schooling, performances, books, and things, and protests. However, it's not completely universal, or yeah, I guess universal throughout all of the Okinawan residents and citizens. So as for their future, I liked this quote by B. Purley in Zombie Linguistics, Experts, Endangered Languages, and the Curse of Undead Voices, where he says that the communities are the ones who decide the fate of their heritage languages. So currently, as aforementioned, there are a couple of significant leaders in the education of Uchinaguchi among the younger generations. These two figures being Choji Higa and Byron Fija. Additionally, what was also mentioned in B. Purley's journal is that oftentimes it takes more than simply education in the younger generation to truly revitalize a language. It needs to really be implemented into daily life through things that we see every day, street signs, shop signs, media, etc. And then also the ability to create relationships with this language. Oh, and also in music and art, which, also kind of ties into the media, because they're such significant parts of daily life, which Okinawa largely already has down, as Uchinaguchi is largely seen in poetry, plays, and things like that. Um, See. And then a comparison with another endangered language. I chose Bahasa Indonesia from one of our required sources. Although Bahasa Indonesia is technically not considered an endangered language, I feel like the reason that it's not largely spoken in Indonesia kind of had a lot of similarities with why Uchinaaguchi is no longer spoken. So, for example, number one would be the unifying of diverse groups. In Indonesia, Bahasa Indonesia was reformed from Malay, which was used as kind of a common language. And in Okinawa, the Japanese government wanted to promote Japanese as a way to unify Japan with their newly annexed Okinawa and the Ryukyu Kingdom. Um, Another similarity was the adoption of a this common language through trade and travelers. So Malay was initially adopted in Indonesia because of its simple grammar. It was relatively easy to learn, so it was used mainly among traders and travelers, and then was reformed into Bahasa Indonesia and became the official language. In Okinawa, the standard Japanese is mostly used today simply to talk to travelers from the mainland and also with authority in professional careers and such, politics as well. And then a third similarity was self-expression. So Indonesians mostly don't use Bahasa Indonesia because of its rigidity and simplicity. They feel that it's limited in being able to express what they're actually thinking and feeling. So they end up creating a mix of Bahasa Indonesia with their other native languages like Javanese, which is used mostly in casual settings. And like aforementioned in Okinawa, they use a mix of Uchinaaguchi with standard Japanese called Okinawan Japanese, which is used largely in informal settings and among their peers. So, a conclusion is that this idea of trying to unite a large and diverse group of people into one identity is what leads to assimilation and erasure of indigenous identities and histories. Um, Number two, revitalizing endangered languages is a very long process, long and difficult, that requires more than just education, um, but also requires changes in daily life and implementation in relationships. Um, and third, for the conclusion, is that the political reality for Okinawa is that war is not over. So even though World War II is officially over and Japan and the United States are no longer actively fighting each other, because there is still such a heavy presence of US military in Okinawa and also significant oppression still happening with their culture and language. So for them, World War II is technically still ongoing among them, Okinawans and the US, and also between Okinawans and the Japanese government. And that is the end of my presentation. So thank you for listening.